When I was a beginner, sculpting something like this felt overwhelming. I thought it takes some special ability. But with a little bit of artistic anatomy knowledge and clear step-by-step process, it can be done. And in this video, I'm gonna talk about that. So let's begin. So I'm starting off with a low-res sphere and masking this part in the side view, extending the unmasked part with move brush to create a very basic head shape, and adding a cylinder for the neck. Another sphere for the upper torso. Stretch it with the gizmo to make the egg shape and also include the shoulder. Adding another cylinder for the lower torso. Starting with the head allows me to compare relative proportions right from the beginning. In this stage, I'm just thinking about big basic shapes and volumes, not the bumps and indentations of the muscles. Now, with the tube tool, I'm drawing the shape of the arm, which in this case is flexed, using the radius to make the forearm area narrower than the upper arm. Then mirror. Now, select all the objects and join them. Then subdivide once and adjust the shapes a little with the move brush. Now I'm gonna add bony landmarks and primary forms. This stage is super important. I'm gonna start by adding big forms of the arms with the inflate brush, indicating major muscles like the sternocleidomastoid of the neck with the clay and crease brush. Adding this indentation for the spine area. It's a very important landmark. Here I'm making the pectoralis major and latissimus dorsi borders and also the thoracic arch and the iliac crest area with the crease brush. Then I'm reinforcing them. Pit of the neck and the collar bones are also very important bony landmarks. Now I'm indicating the borders of the deltoid with the crease brush and finally adding the shoulder blade or the scapula borders and the center line in front. To understand the importance of landmark, imagine you're in a new city trying to find a restaurant. You'd most likely look at a map, and major landmarks on the map will tell you where you are and in which direction you should go. Same thing is happening here. These bony landmarks are helping me correctly place those muscles. Every muscle starts somewhere and reaches somewhere. Now I'm gonna voxel remesh since all the major forms are in place. Then smooth out these areas, especially where two forms are connected and left a mark because of voxel remeshing. I'm also using the clay brush to make those form transitions smoother. Now I'm taking out extra volumes using the clay brush in the upper arm area. This brush is great for adding or taking out volumes. Then using the crease brush to make the marks I made earlier clear. At the back, I'm adding this important bony landmark called C7, then starting to build the form of the trapezius muscle with the clay brush and using these landmarks I added earlier as guide. Then smoothing it out. Here, I'm adding the elbow landmarks, also known as the olecranon process of the ulna and the lateral and medial epicondyle of the humerus bone. Using the crease brush to indicate the soft forms of the ridge muscles, it creates a beautiful contrast with the bony, hard structure of the elbow. Now, I'm starting to build the bicep volumes gradually with the clay brush. Smoothing it out a little bit. So when I'm sculpting muscles, I'm constantly trying to visualize the underlying bony structure, something like this. Okay, now I'm indicating the coracobrachialis muscle and this tendon part of the tricep. Building the volume of the deltoid with the clay brush. Smoothing it out. I don't really sculpt in one area for long. I like to develop the sculpture as a whole. Starting to build the acromion part of the deltoid. Then I'm indicating the brachialis muscle. Making a mark to show the separation of the pectoralis and the deltoid. Adding volumes for tricep long head and the lateral head. I keep the brush strength low while building volume so I can gradually build them up. It's almost like I'm drawing in 3D space. Once I've added volume, I smooth them out a little. Here I'm drawing this line to indicate the form of the medial head of the tricep. Now I'm gonna mask these parts and push and pull with the move brush to create the basic shapes of the hands. Using flattened brush to adjust the volume and preparing for the actual sculpting process of the hands. Flattened brush is great for creating major planes in an instant. Now I'm developing the flexor group of the forearm. I'm gonna think about individual muscles if needed later. Here is an interesting thing happening. The aponeurosis of the bicep, it's like a band which is creating this depression. Now I'm drawing the ridge muscles and building volumes with the clay brush. Adding the extensor group of the forearm. Sometimes I leave the brush strokes without smoothing them. I like the effect. Add more volume to hands and adjust the shape near the elbow. I'm starting off by defining the side plane of the hand using the flattened brush. Here I'm sculpting the metacarpal bone of the thumb. Then I'm separating these forms with the crease brush to create the volume for the fingers. Also the pad. Adding the thumb, adjusting the shapes, adding palmaris longus and flexor carpi ulnaris. In this area, the polygons are stressed. So I'm gonna enable dynamic topology and use the smooth brush with low intensity and brush over this area to add more polygon only in this area. Then I'm gonna disable it and start sculpting again. With this extra geometry, I can now add more details. Sculpting individual fingers with the crease brush. Now I'm adding the knuckles with the clay brush. I'm still paying attention to the overall shape of the hand when sculpting each fingers. Adding tendons in these areas. I'm looking at my own hand for reference. Now the degree of the finish is gonna be low here on the hands since I wanna focus more on the arm and the torso area. I'm making the lumbar region of the spine a bit more prominent with the crease brush. On both sides of the spine, there's a muscle group called erector spinae and it's shaped like pipes. So I'm trying to make that pipe-like volume. This is the lateral form of the same muscle. Now I'll disable symmetry and sculpt on each side separately to make the sculpture look more natural. I'm gradually adding more volumes to these already established major muscle forms. My brush strokes are following the natural direction of the muscle fibers. Sometimes I like to do cross-hatching strokes like here where I'm building the subtle form of the latissimus dorsi. Defining the border of the teres major, which is a major and prominent muscle in this area. Even though I'm familiar with the muscles and all, I never work without reference. It's super important and often overlooked by beginners. So I'm gonna brush over the whole thing with smooth brush and start sculpting on this side. Here, as you can see, I'm defining the teres major as well. The pectoralis major looks too flat, so I'm adding volumes on both sides with clay brush. Following the radiating muscle fibers, then smooth over the whole thing. Here I'm adding the linea alba or the center line, defining the thoracic arch area. I'm switching to a new matte cap because it allows me to see surface details more easily. An important thing to remember is that most muscles of the torso are flat. They are not round like upper arm or upper leg muscles, so the underlying bony structure influences the surface form heavily in this area. Kind of like if you put a piece of cloth on a football, the cloth takes the shape of the ball. Same way, the flat muscles are respecting the underlying bony structure here. So always take that into consideration when sculpting in this area. Adding the abs with the clay brush, I'm not putting too much pressure. I like to build forms gradually, as I mentioned earlier. Separating these forms with the crease brush. The shapes are not very geometric and a bit abstract, so here I can focus on design without breaking the rules. We're artists making art, so design is also an important aspect. I'm building the forms with the clay brush, defining the borders with the crease brush and then smoothing them out. For the serratus anterior muscle, I'm building this volume and then defining individual digits with my curve brush. It's basically a modified crease brush. Adding more volume with the clay brush. Now masking this area and using inflate brush, then smoothing it out. So before this stage, I quad remeshed it and projected the details from Voxel Remesh mesh to retopo mesh. I will explain this process in detail in the next video. The main objective of this stage is to make the forms cleaner And for that I'm using smooth brush. I can go a subdivision down and refine forms like this. This matte cap is great for this stage. While smoothing, I'm trying not to smooth the indentations. Defining this area with the crease brush. In this pose, the model is inhaling, so the ribs will be prominent since the muscles here are flat. So I hope you guys found it useful. Subscribe for more tutorials like this and check out these two playlists for more tutorials. I will see you in the next video.